Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is our Global Outlook, which is sponsored by Maury's newsletter, Global Outlook. The invasion continues as over 400,000 migrants arrive in Italy. Meanwhile, the German government says dental costs will be in the billions to care for the migrants' teeth. The media focuses everywhere else, but it's even worse in France, descending into chaos and lawlessness. Maury, this is a disaster beyond words, what's going on in Europe right now.
Well,
and you being European from Germany, this has got to break your heart to see what's going on there. And these people are actually taking over the country and invading the country.
It doesn't break my heart because they're doing it to themselves. They have every chance. These countries, Europe is yesterday's news. The guy that wrote the book, Das Untergang des Abendlandes, in English was the decline and fall of Europe was right. They're bringing it on themselves. You know when it started? It started with the First World War, and then it was just perpetuated in the Second War. And the only country that seemed to come out of it with some degree of competitiveness and productivity was Germany. Isn't it kind of ironic that the two most successful post-war countries, other than the United States, were Japan and Germany? Because the discipline that was used for terrorism and murdering millions of people was now used for production and productivity, and for a while they were doing well.
So the bastard child Italy got left out of that.
Well, Italy never did much one way or the other. You know,
they were part of that Axis.
They were part of the Axis. They always were on the wrong side. They were on the wrong side in the First War. They were on the wrong side in the Second War. But they were never a major production country. The problem is that Germany, right after the war, imported 2 million Turks, and everybody said, well, they imported Muslims. Well, these were Kemal Ataturk Turks. They were secular, and they really were hardworking, and they integrated pretty well into the German body politic at that time. And the biggest mistake that the Germans made was getting into the European community. And then
without Germany, there wouldn't be a European community.
Of course not. But the Chancellor of Germany, Otto Kohl, at that particular time, this was going to be his payback for the terrible things that the Germans perpetrated against everybody else. But in doing so, they gave up the mark, which was every bit as strong at that time as the dollar and the pound. And even the yen was much stronger then than it is now. But he felt this way he would pay back for the terrible things Germany did. Well, they didn't pay anybody back. They just got themselves down into the mess with the rest of them. And now they got this guy, Draghi, the central banker of Europe. I don't think the guy knows from one day to the next what he's doing. Things are so bad now that Germany is actually having people pay money to them to allow them to have it in the banks. That's how desperate people are to keep it in safe haven.
Look at France. The European media is not even talking about France right now.
That's right.
That country is being completely overrun. The streets are being stopped. Commerce is being stopped.
True.
Truckers are being dragged out of their trucks and beaten, and their goods are stolen. The women are being raped all over Europe. I mean, this has become a nightmare. And these are the people that John Kerry and Hillary Rotten Clinton and President Obama want to bring to America.
It's worse than that, because what happened was the original flood of Muslims from North Africa into France happened from Algeria. If you recall, de Gaulle was the guy that gave Algeria its freedom. Before that, Algeria was a department of France, which means they were subjects and citizens of France. So they were allowed to come in with it. They were not outsiders coming in. They were just French citizens coming into the major part of France. So they immediately became a multi-million-dollar drag on France. And today, out of a population of about 55 million in France, I'd say you got about 8 million Muslims. And now they're opening the door even more. So what you just said, the unpleasant things that are happening on top of the fact they are already a major factor in the body politic of France today.
And we talked about this a year ago, that ISIS was planning, this was a strategic plan to flood Europe and eventually America with their fighters. And a lot of those refugees are of middle-aged men that are ready to fight the jihad.
Yes.
And this is ridiculous.
Yeah, but your president said this was a JV team.
Not my president.
I just thought I'd stick it into
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Yeah, the JV team, who's now taking over parts of Libya. And what did Gaddafi say before we foolishly went in and overthrew him? If you get rid of me, the Islamists are taking over.
And
That's
the funny
what's
thing,
happening.
even though he was a bad guy, and
so was Hussein.
well, wait, but he cleaned up his act. That's the ironic thing. You know, he gave up his nuclear development. He really gave it up totally, not with
because he saw what happened to Saddam.
not with some cockamamie deal that was cooked up. But no, I think he really realized the only chance he had for maintaining his power for himself and his sons was to try to westernize to a certain extent, and he was doing that.
Yep.
So he became the victim of the Arab Spring, which became the Arab...
The Muslim Brotherhood takeover is what it really was.
It's so disgusting.
And Hillary Clinton's on record laughing and cackling about how we came, we saw, we killed him, about Gaddafi.
Yeah.
We went in there and just murdered him.
Well, that's her way of trying to cover up her fallibility in Benghazi, of which a very good movie was made called 13 Days in Benghazi.
13 hours.
13 hours, 30
Yeah,
days.
yeah. Italy now has just taken in 500,000 migrants. So if these people have no money, they have no medical treatment, they have nothing to offer these communities, how are they getting in the door, and why are they not stopping them?
I can't answer that question. I think what you're asking an intelligent question about people that are not acting intelligently. And I think the people in these countries are so beset by the socialist sickness that has pervaded Europe today. You know, Europe today I think Bernie Sanders would love to be the king of Europe, because what he's asking for is what he'd like to impose on the United States. You know, take away from the rich and give to the poor, which means everybody becomes poor.
Can you see a situation where another radical nationalist could come into power in Germany?
Not in Germany.
Or
no.
France? Or Britain?
No,
I can see an ultra-right-wing movement being taken over.
I have pondered that question. I think Europe is so screwed up today that they can't even get a good nationalist organization together. There is not even an indication. You can say that about the United States. And ultra-nationalism is never any good because it ends up very badly, and it does horrible things, and it always goes back to Hitler and people like him.
But you can't hate your country either.
No, I understand it. But what I'm saying is, you don't have the nucleus of an element in the United States of America or in Europe that can come together and create the kind of power structure that will move things forward. Unfortunately,
is that somewhat of what Donald Trump is representing right now?
Yes. Not only some, he's the only one that's representing that.
Because he's a nationalist.
Well, I look at him, and to be very frank, he's the only man I think that can get this country turned around. It's my personal opinion, because he has almost messianic kind of qualities, and messianic people have a tendency to go overboard sometimes. But he does have a following, and I don't think it's an accident that he is getting all the kind of support that he's getting, because the average person deep down inside of them needs a major leader. And if everything's going fine, democracy is fine too. You know, if we can afford a democracy when everybody's doing well. But now when people are scared, and security and the things you were talked about that these foreigners were committing in Europe and Germany and Italy, France and whatever.
Sweden, Belgium.
Well, I'll tell you, to me, the Scandinavian countries are beneath contempt. They really are. They don't. they have sacrificed their own people to bring in elements that have destroyed whatever they stood for.
And it's interesting. You don't see Saudi Arabia. You don't see Iran. You don't see Yemen. None of these Muslim countries will take in their own brothers.
You're absolutely right. The Iranians will not
They ship them off to Europe.
No wonder they look down on us, because they say these idiotic people in Europe and America, they're doing our dirty work for us.
It's unbelievable.
You would say Saudi Arabia, 28 million people in a huge country, they could take in 10 million people overnight. But you think, listen, they're paying billions of dollars every year to throw them out.
Right.
The Wahhabis, who are really the basis of ISIS, they're cruel, they're murderers. If they didn't pay them off, they'd get rid of the king in 5 minutes. So what they're doing is they're paying blackmail. They're smarter than we are. I think those Arab countries are showing that they are a lot smarter than the rest of the world.
Well, I think our empathy is being used against us.
It is.
And I think that our guilt is being used against us.
Well,
and Germany has that guilt that they're never going to get rid of. They're never going to stave off that guilt from World War II, I don't think.
Well, and I think they shouldn't. But the point is, they put you don't eradicate the guilt by destroying yourself.
And this nation's administration is trying to bring back the guilt from 235 years ago, in my opinion.
Well, not less than 235 years ago. Let's say in the middle 60s.